Welcome everyone to another edition of the Classic Comic Archive, a series where I recap and review many of Marvel Comics' most seminal early issues. Our story for today is Journey into Mystery 86, cover dated November of 1962. This issue marks the first full appearance of Thor's father Odin, as well as prominent early villain Zarko the Tomorrow Man. The issue was written by Stan Lee and Larry Lieber, drawn by Jack Kirby, and inked by Dick Ayers. Our issue opens up with a striking splash page, showing our titular hero struggling against the Tomorrow Man's giant robots. Yet before we can witness this confrontation, we must first travel to the far future of the 23rd century. In that time, Earth has become a technological paradise, where war and weapons have been completely abolished. Thus mankind is flourishing, as people live in perfect harmony. All except the century's greatest scientist, Zarko. He views the people of his time as weak, tender-hearted fools, and he seeks to conquer them. Yet there's not a single weapon on the planet to do so. So Zarko has hatched a scheme to travel to an age when powerful weapons were in abundance. To this end, he's already constructed the world's only time machine, but he still needs to select an era to travel to. So he accesses another one of his ingenious devices, the time scope, which enables him to peer into the past. Thus Zarko stumbles onto the many nuclear bombs of the 20th century, a perfect weapon to steal and then use to conquer his own time. Yet before we can witness Zarko's scheme in action, we must first travel back to the present, which at the time of publication was 1962. There, we see Thor in a remote desert, helping the US military test their latest experimental weapons, the first of which are two missiles. One is offensive, and the other an interceptor. The military first fires their offensive missile, and a short time after the interceptor. Thor's task is to reach the offensive missile before the interceptor. So the hero mightily whirls his hammer and heads skyward at amazing speeds. He narrowly reaches the offensive missile first, but notices that the interceptors are getting faster. This is exactly what the military is hoping for, as they're using Thor to gauge the speed of their interceptors, which are evidently improving. But more tests remain, as we see Thor back on the ground being outfitted with several sensors. The military is preparing to detonate their latest experimental weapon, the cobalt bomb. They want to test its effects on a person's physiology, yet its detonation would certainly kill any normal man. But Thor is a mighty immortal, and he's volunteered to brunt the explosion. So he walks deep into an isolated testing range and stands right next to the bomb. Its 10-second detonation countdown then begins, yet halfway through, a strange craft appears out of thin air and onto the testing range. Out jumps Zarko, who steals the cobalt bomb right in front of a bewildered Thor. The Thunder God then orders the countdown be stopped and hurls his mighty hammer at the thief. But Zarko's too fast, as he's already returned to his time machine and escaped to the future. Military officials then quickly rush onto the scene, just as confused as Thor. One stumbles onto a shard of metal that had broken off of the villain's craft. The official realizes that the fragment is from the future, as it's made of a material beyond current technology. He then hands off the shard for Thor to inspect. But the hero is a man of action, and hurriedly flies away with the shard in tow, only telling the officials that he's leaving to track down the Tomorrow Man. He flies to a distant mountain range, and standing atop its peak, Thor stamps his hammer twice on the ground to summon a powerful storm. Then, as thunder and lightning begin to barrage the mountaintop, Thor powerfully appeals for the aid of his father Odin, king of the Norse gods. The All-Father thus appears before his son, with his visage mightily cast upon the sky itself. Thor asks of him the power to travel into the future to stop the Tomorrow Man. Odin agrees to help, and commands his son to strap the mysterious shard onto his hammer, so that it can guide him to the time of Zarko. Thor obliges and is next told to spin his hammer as swiftly as he can. Spinning faster than the speed of light itself, Thor is then magically whirled through the fourth dimension of time. He arrives in a futuristic city, where he quickly encounters many of its citizens. They reveal that the year is 2262, indeed the time of Zarko, but the hero's a month late, as the villain has already conquered the world by threatening to activate his cobalt bomb. And seeing as how no one else has any weapons, mankind was forced to submit to his tyrannical rule. Listening to the citizens' many pleas, Thor declares that he's arrived to defeat Zarko. But he needs the people's help, and thus he reveals to them his secret plan. Yet we the readers don't get a chance to listen in, as the issue shifts focus to the next day, when Thor is approaching Zarko's castle headquarters. But the villain spots the Thunder God from a hidden vantage point and orders a pair of guards to apprehend him. The guards themselves have no qualms against Thor, but reluctantly obeys Arko, lest he activate his cobalt bomb. So the pair hop into futuristic hover cars and begin pursuing Thor. Yet before they can reach him, a mysterious cloaked figure snaps a nearby tree and powerfully hurls it into their path. The guards crash into the obstacle, giving Thor time to rush into Zarko's castle and confront the villain. But the Tomorrow Man had been waiting for the hero and activates a hidden trapdoor that sends him careening into a room full of magnetic mirrors. Thus it seems that Thor has finally met his match, as Zarko can simply turn on and off the mirror's magnetism, endlessly smashing the hero into the mirrors until he's defeated. But the villain's control panel is then suddenly destroyed by Thor's hammer, as it's revealed that the Asgardian in the mirror trap was actually a decoy and Thor himself was the mysterious cloaked figure. But Zarko isn't left defenseless, as he retrieves an electron gun that he blasts at Thor. The villain claims it will send the hero to another dimension, which is quickly proven true as Thor begins to fade away from existence. Yet the Thunder God is narrowly able to save himself by drawing in a great breath and then exhaling it with the force of a hurricane. The breath's power disrupts Arko's weapon and sends him fleeing. Thor chases after the villain, but is only led into another trap as he enters a chamber guarded by giant robots. Zarko explains that the machines were originally created to be laborers, but he's reprogrammed them to suit his evil needs. Thus he orders the robots to disarm Thor of his hammer, which one actually does, presumably because the hammer's enchantment only applies to living beings. Regardless, Thor now finds himself without his greatest weapon and with only 60 seconds to retrieve it before he transforms into the frail Dr. Blake. But even without his hammer, Thor still possesses godly strength. Thinking quickly, he tears apart the floor panels beneath his feet and bursts open a pipe underneath. The torrent of water then engulfs the chamber and seeps into the robot's inner workings, causing them to malfunction. Thus the one holding Thor's hammer releases it, which the hero retrieves with only a single second to spare. But Thor's troubles aren't over yet, as Zarko is fleeing into a futuristic plane equipped with the cobalt bomb. He plans to release it and vengefully destroy the world, as he knows he cannot defeat Thor. But of course the Thunder God isn't going to let that happen, as he stamps his hammer twice on the ground and once again summons a powerful storm. Its lightning repeatedly strikes Arko's plane, causing so much turbulence that the villain can't reach the controls to release the cobalt bomb. But the weapon itself isn't immune to the turbulence either, as it begins to loosen from its release port. Eventually it breaks free completely and begins plummeting towards the surface of Earth. But Thor thankfully flies up and catches it in time. The hero then returns to the ground just as Zarko's plane smashes into a nearby building. The villain survives his crash, but emerges from the wreckage with seemingly permanent amnesia, as he doesn't even know who he is. Medical workers then ushers Zarko away, as a crowd of citizens cheer on Thor for saving them. But now the Thunder God must return to his own time. So he magically spins his hammer as before and returns to the testing range in the present. An astonished general asks Thor how he acquired the cobalt bomb, but another official tells the general that it's not important, as what's pressing is the myriad of tests they're scheduled to perform. With that, the issue subsequently ends as we see Dr. Blake return to his medical office, where his nurse Jane Foster is reading about Thor's rescue of the cobalt bomb in the latest paper. He feigns ignorance and uninterest at the events mentioned, but silently wonders if she would ever suspect that the very news she's reading was made by him. That concludes Journey into Mystery issue 86 and another episode of the Classic Comic Archive. But as always, I would like to offer a brief review of this issue. Overall, I thought that this was a surprisingly enjoyable, if somewhat goofy story. The contrast between Thor's mythic might and Zarko's technological tyranny was rather fun, and it's something that I'm looking forward to seeing more of, as thankfully the Tomorrow Man makes a number of further appearances in the coming issues. I'm also glad that this story fully introduced Odin, as his presence opens the floodgates for the entire pantheon of Norse gods to appear. But in any case, let me know what you thought of this issue and the video, and feel free to suggest other classic comics for me to cover. Thanks for watching.